My name is Alex Rodriguez. My handle is AxelToss, and I'm joined by an excellent panel. And we're going to start a little bit differently here because I want us to all introduce ourselves. But I think one of the main themes of community in esports, a lot of people are trying to figure that out right now. How do you properly engage your community? Where does the community come from? Why is that important? Genuinity, authenticity, we hear all these words. So I hope that by introducing ourselves and maybe telling our stories a little bit, anyone here can get a glimpse of our experience within our respective communities. So I'll start here, guys, and we're going to introduce ourselves and kind of elaborate a little bit on our backgrounds and the different communities we've been a part of. So I grew up playing video games, and I jumped into esports around 2010, 2011. I was a partner for YouTube and Justin TV at the time, mostly focusing on StarCraft. So I was very involved with the StarCraft community way back in the day, and I think Duran, aka Xeris, that was kind of his start as well. Moving forward, kind of examining the whole space, I've been involved with a lot of different games and communities, including being a host and commentator for the Halo Championship Series, the Rocket League Championship Series, and quite a few other games leading up to this point. So I have a few favorite moments that we might get into in a little bit up here, but that's just a brief description of my history. I was also involved in the collegiate space in Texas. I went to Texas A&M and interacted with a lot of folks around me to help make some collegiate stuff happen. So we'll start with Kevin here and go down the line. If you guys can kind of explain a little bit about your history and the communities you've been a part of up to this point.
Hey everybody, Kevin Hitt here. Born in the 300 baud modem days of the BBS and baptized in the AOL chat room, so to speak. I come to esports actually from a very different place than most people. Obviously, I'm an Atari 2600, I'm an Amiga 500 guy. I've played and done all the games. But I sort of lost my way, so to speak. I went into a career in coaching where the community there, very huge in terms of collegiate volleyball, Olympic volleyball, and I had another career after I left that in law enforcement. And so then I came back to esports, and when I was writing, I wrote much like I would write my reports in the patrol car, and they were very boring and nobody would read them because it was just a chronological, order of things that happened, and people would go, "This is boring, I don't want to read it." So after I got hurt and injured and out of the sheriff's department, I went to a little place called RotoWire and did some writing for their Major League Baseball depth charts. And when their boss called me and said, "Do you know anything about video games?" I said, "I play Call of Duty." He said, "Great, you're our esports assistant editor." And that was about 2015. So here I am talking on a panel about esports, which I absolutely love, and I absolutely am into the collegiate scene. I think that is one of the fastest growing spaces here, and I can't wait to talk about that.
Hi, I'm Dominic Kallas. I'm the head of U.S. operations for Gen.G Esports, which is a Korean-based esports organization. I actually came into esports a little bit differently as well. So I graduated with a dual major in econ and finance and thought I was going to be going full Wall Street my entire life. And was able to spend 5 years in tech investing in venture capital and private equity. And as part of that, I was tasked becoming the gaming and esports expert and had so much fun doing that, helped raise funding for Gen.G and eventually jumped from the PE and VC side over to work on the esports side. And a big part of that was the community that I just gained throughout my time working with my friends in the banking industry. And a lot of these guys would not go out to the clubs afterwards and would rather hang out and play League of Legends. And I built a community there and a friendship group there that I just felt really resonated with a lot of people that were my age, and really thought that there was an opportunity to see that grow on not just a scale here on small community basis, but also on a global basis, that finding that video games is bringing a lot of people together, guys, girls, everyone. And so just thought that was a super interesting opportunity. And so I've been at Gen.G here for a year now.
Yeah, my name is Duran Parsi. I am the CEO of the Collegiate Starleague. I got into esports in also a different way than everyone else. I was a StarCraft player. I've been literally playing since I was 10 years old, so 2/3 of my life at this point. And when I was in high school, one of the things that I noticed at the time, this was back in StarCraft 1, really before the term esports even existed, I noticed that there was really only one major tournament every year, which was World Cyber Games. And in Korea, they had leagues going on all the time on TV and things like that. But in the United States, there was really only one tournament per year. So one thing that I wanted to do was to start organizing tournaments and do things for the North American community. And so that's what I started doing in about 2003, 2004. And then when I got into college, I kind of extended that to college. I was a huge StarCraft player, and my roommate's friend actually told me that the tech club on campus was hosting a big StarCraft tournament. So being part of the competitive scene, I kind of showed up there thinking that I would win really easily. But I actually found out that there was over 70 people that signed up for the tournament on campus, and I just had no idea that those people existed. So through the time playing in that tournament, I met a lot of the students there. I became friends with a lot of them. And then at the end of it, we decided to put together a team and start challenging players from other UCs. So I started posting on message boards, finding players, and created a league for the UC schools that ran. And then kind of the collegiate esports community was born out of that. And so it was really my passion for StarCraft and meeting people on campus that shared that same passion that I just had no idea about until I went to this tournament on campus, and then using my experience of running and organizing tournaments to try to take that nationally.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, guys. And a couple of you we're talking about the collegiate space, and when it comes to community, I'm going to share a quick story too, because I think this is a very important point for anyone really learning about getting into the space, or like, oh, how do you get started? What do you do? And Duran just gave a great example there, where you just reach out around you, like wherever you are. And I think this applies to college students especially. It's like you don't know who might be very close to you, who might be interested in what you're interested in. And you might not know, you have some pro gamers next door or people very interested in esports. So just to share a quick story here for me, I went to Texas A&M. I was passively involved with video games and seeing what was going on in Korea, and we'll get into that in a second because I think that's a really cool point too. But we've seen this expansion from Korea to Europe to the United States, and when I was in college, seeing all this happening, I'm just like, okay, well, how do I get involved? We see, we're watching YouTube late into the night, GSL in Korea, so on and so forth. When is this going to happen here in the United States? So I pretty quickly navigated Team Liquid. I got a little lucky, and I found someone on TeamLiquid.net who went to the same school as me, and we were within a year of each other. So immediately we became best friends, and to this day, he's one of the oldest people I know in the space, and he's currently my agent. He moved more into agency space. So any of you guys know Character Select Agency. So I met one of my best friends in college just by reaching out on a forum. And then from there, it's like, how do you push that a little bit further? And going to Texas A&M, being in Texas, there's the University of Texas. There's other universities in Texas. And there you go. That's already a network of community that maybe you can do something with. So I reached out to the University of Texas. That was TESPA, which is now owned by Blizzard, the Rosen twins, Adam and Tyler Rosen. So that was a situation when I was in college where I could just reach out around me in my own university, in a university nearby, and then all of a sudden we created an international event called the Lone Star Clash way back in the day, where we flew in pro players from around the world to attend a collegiate event. And for us to do, that was just really cool. And this was so many years ago, right? So I think there's a lot of value to potentially gain by just reaching around you, no matter where you might be. Do you guys have any examples or any favorite examples of, I know Duran, you just gave a great example there of communities that you've been involved with, and examples like this where you've either reached out around you, or can you guys discuss, any favorite examples of community from when you got started to where you are right now?
I'll go ahead. So I think the really cool thing is actually seeing the community of esports in Korea really be transplanted on a global basis. So in Korea, video gamings are, like playing video games is just part of the culture. It's something that almost every single kid does after school. South Korea is not known for their athletic abilities, and so playing video games has become almost second nature to a pastime. And so what you actually see is where in North America or in Europe, where video games tend to be very heavily male-dominated, in South Korea you actually see it's very split across genders, it's split across really age, anyone under 30, and it's just a way of everyone coming together and gaming together. Not everybody there wants to be a pro gamer, not everybody there wants to go to the highest level. A lot of these people just want to hang out after school with their friends. And so I think what we're talking about here on a collegiate basis is actually just taking a lot of that Korean sort of style and trying to implement that into a North American system. So being able to have younger generation, younger kids have access to a video game system, a PC bang system, where they can go hang out and play video games with your friends. Granted, some of those kids will become the best that there ever were, and that's how they grow up through the development of that scene. But a lot of the kids just want a way to interact and connect with their friends locally in their environment, but also connect with their friends all across the US when they're all transplanted from high school and going to different colleges.
You know, what I think we're seeing now, especially in Southern California, you're seeing the birth of high school leagues. That community is starting to grow exponentially. League of Legends is being played at high schools such as like Los Alamitos and Villa Park, you know, and the league is growing daily. I think that community is going to be the next base of the esports space, where all these kids that have been playing these games that are now not stigmatized by playing these games are going to grow up and they are going to want to play in college. You know, the Big West, the Pac-12, you know, the Big 10, the Big 12, they're starting to gain in that space as well in terms of players. And that is great for the ecosystem. If you can get it at its, you know, just its youngest level of where they want to play and have fun, and then they, you know, may want to play professionally or play in college. I mean, where are we at right now? Over maybe I think like 77 or 81 schools that are offering scholarships. The community is growing, and it's great to see that high school community of those, you know, 13 to 18-year-olds joining in and starting to see and do something that they really love.
Thanks again, guys. Great answers. I kind of want to piggyback on that a little bit in regards to what we've been talking about, you know, seeing everything happening in Korea, seeing the expansion around the world, and various stumbling blocks that might be happening to prevent, you know, the true fruition of esports as we might expect to see it as time goes by. So, and I think you guys have so much experience, you know, Dominic and Duran especially, of you know, examining what's going on in Korea. And there's so much we can learn from that, I think. So I want to touch on that a little bit, guys. What are the biggest challenges that you see, or what can we learn the most from Korea? What are they getting right? Because clearly it's, you know, Dominic, we talked about some stats before we got up here. We see the fast internet speeds, we see the banks involved, we see the government involved in Korea. So can you guys, anyone can feel free to jump in here, but just discussing the biggest hurdles that we have. What can we learn from the East?
Yeah, I think honestly, one of the biggest hurdles is just the stigmatization. I don't know what the word is, but sort of the anti-gaming culture that exists still in the United States and North America. And you see this oftentimes when esports are on TV, for example, when ESPN puts on Overwatch or something like that. There's always tons of people saying, you know, why is this on my TV? This isn't a real thing. So I think while those barriers are starting to break down, I think they still exist, and I think that's an issue. And I think one of the other issues that is pretty substantial is education. I think in Korea, right, there's almost 20 years, if not more, of sort of gaming being sort of part of and ingrained in the culture. So from a parent perspective, when their kids are starting to play games, I think knowing that there are sort of governmental regulations that help protect it. I mean, like for example, in Korea, you have to register with your, you know, social security number, and the government actually blocks you off from playing after certain, you know, times in the night. So the government is really on board, and I think from that perspective, parents have a lot sense of security and knowing that there is like a real system here, and it's not just this random, you know, thing where their kids are playing, you know, 15 hours a day for nothing. And honestly, I think that's something that we can do a lot better, is just educating parents as to what the opportunities are for gaming, where they can go, not just as players, but in terms of a career, right? Esports can be a career option for people in just about any field outside of playing too. Like, you can be a writer, you can be a chef, pro teams have, chefs, personal trainers, psychologists, things like that. So basically any career that any young person wants to do can be had in the esports industry. So I think just like letting parents know that these systems exist in esports is something that we need to do a better job of, and that's something that, again, like in Korea in particular, has just been part of their culture for so long.
Dominic, can you comment a little on that, especially your experience, working in Korea or with Korean company, the best elements that you've seen from over there that maybe you're looking to bring over here a little bit, or that you think can be helpful in the growth of esports?
I think it comes a little bit to like the core thesis of this panel right here. It's a community, right? I think in Korea it's very much of gaming is just viewed as a way to connect with the community and connect with your friends. And so as I think gaming becomes more prevalent here in North America, and as Duran was saying, that those barriers get broken down, I think you'll start to see more and more of that, of people coming out and say, hey, I actually game, and this is a way that I spend my free time. I think a way that's actually helping that is even with professional players, like NBA players, like Gordon Hayward say, hey, I play League of Legends, and Klay Thompson say, hey, I play Call of Duty. Things like that start happening on a more and more basis will make video games a more norm, and will allow for these communities to really develop and broaden and become more of the North American culture, which then I think will replicate very much of same of the Korean culture as gaming.
All right, well, we have a few minutes left, so if anyone has a question, keep that in mind. I want to ask, in regards to esports community, we have kind of the micro communities and we have the macro community. What I mean is, you might have your local communities in different cities, or you might have your university communities, so on and so forth. You might have your gaming communities, like your League of Legends community, your StarCraft communities, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, there is a macro community of all of us, right? And with that, we've seen some pretty crazy things in the space that have been honestly pretty inspiring. You look at the compendium for Dota and that community and how much money they've been able to raise. You look at something as simple as like Twitch Plays Pokemon, which kind of took everyone by storm. Like that came out of nowhere, but that was the gaming community on Twitch just doing something ridiculous. So that makes me think, like, is there more for the macro gaming community? You look at the influence of Ninja, you look at the influence of PewDiePie. This is a whole culture. This is a whole world of potentially influence. So can you guys comment on that a little bit as far as what potential strength you see in the overall esports community, and what responsibility might be there, maybe even for the really heavy hitters like a Ninja or a PewDiePie?
And real quick, I'm looking at it from the media perspective, and if you don't think that media is the best marketing arm there is, it's free. So, if you're able to get those stories out to the media, like Ninja, right, blew up. He's on every major news network, doing these things. Kid-friendly guy. All of his streams, he tries to keep it to where, kids can tune in even accidentally, and he's not going to curse, and he's not going to do these things. I think he's a great example of how to cultivate community. And when you're that popular, and then you're kind of being seen again by different media outlets, it really shows who we are. And I think that's a big deal. We need to show the world that we're not just a bunch of guys, in a basement playing games, but we actually are a community that's inclusive. And I'll tell you what, I have, in my life, I've never seen a more inclusive community than esports and gaming, where you're at a dream hack, and it doesn't matter what race, what ethnicity and orientation. They're giving each other high fives. They are watching their favorite teams, and I think promoting those kind of values out there is really going to show people what we're all about, and it cultivates that, and parents will see that it's a wholesome place.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think one of the things that's most interesting about esports, like Kevin mentioned, is the fact that it is quite a diverse community. And I think that's sort of naturally inherent in gaming in general, right? Unlike traditional sports like basketball or football, which, there are literal physical limitations to, who can be a professional player. Like, I can never play in the NBA because I'm short and I'm not athletic and things like that. I can be a professional gamer just the same way as, a woman can, or a kid can, or an older person can, as long as, you can click and hold the mouse, right? You can be a pro gamer. And even there are people who are disabled who are playing games competitively as well. So there's no barriers, which is an awesome thing. I think one of the things that esports can do better is the segments of the communities. For example, the FGC community, Super Smash Bros. Players, Counter-Strike players, League of Legends players. There is some fragmentation within sort of subsets of esports, and I think that's an area that esports as a whole can experience a lot of growth. I think if there are overall more support within these micro communities for what the other things are doing, I think that will go a long way towards advancing sort of the cause of esports in North America in particular. If Smash players can start supporting what's going on with Dota, like, oh wow, TI raised $35 million for its prize pool this year, that's an amazing thing. That's something that Smash players should be tweeting about and talking about and really amplifying the message of these things. So I think in terms of growth areas for esports and its community, that's probably the thing that I think we need to do more as a whole, is really just supporting everyone. Not that there are people that are not supportive, it's just that there are these segments that don't really acknowledge or sort of interact with each other as much as they should. So that's what I would say with that.
Do you have anything to add, Dominic?
No, I think I think we're doing a lot with building communities here in esports, and I think it's just continuing everybody to be supportive of all the things that are being done. So if you see a Ninja or PewDiePie, like, not putting that person down, but like continuing to support everybody, and all the growth that's happening in the industry will help really broaden the community and help strengthen the community.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great things to be gained from the community, like, knowing you guys. I've met you guys before in the past, Duran too, like way back in the day. There's a lot of cool things going on there, so excited to see that just continue to grow and become even more of an asset for anyone doing anything in esports. I want to open it up to any questions. If anyone wants to raise your hand, anyone have a question, as we're kind of running out of time, we might have room for one. So I'll look out for a hand, but I'll ask a final question here, and I'll keep an eye out for any hands. To kind of close this out here, guys, what kind of advice would you give for either a company or an entity looking to engage with their community? I feel like that's a good way to kind of close this out. And again, there's a lot of ways that people are trying to engage their communities with creating leagues like the Collegiate Starleague, creating teams, creating tournaments. They talked a little bit about infrastructure on the last panel. So what advice would you guys have for anyone looking to just do anything within esports? What are the very important steps you have to take to make sure you're being true to whatever community you're trying to engage?
I think the biggest thing is engaging with your fans on social. You don't have social media accounts just to drive up numbers, but you have a social media accounts to be able to connect with your fans and engage with your fans. And then also making sure you're taking analytics from those social media numbers, saying, hey, do my fans enjoy more video content? Do they like more player stories? Understanding all of that sort of stuff. But not just viewing social media as, hey, this is like a platform for me to promote my message, but view it as a platform for me to communicate with my fans as well.
I think one of the things that an entity can do to help foster community, I think publishers play a huge role in this. I think publishers can and should work harder. There are some that do a great job of this and some that don't do as good of a job at this. But I think publishers can do a lot more to empower existing communities and help them grow and support them to do big things. And I think, honestly, publishers are the best equipped to be able to grow the communities for their respective games. And so I think publishers in general should take a much more proactive approach at really fostering the growth of communities in all aspects of those games.
And just to kind of round it out, as a member of the media, and I've written about this numerous times, I do believe that publishers need to interact with media a little bit more. I think they need to get their message across with us. And at the same time, again, the more media that are covering events, the greater the reach is that you're going to be able to see in terms of, how wholesome and what it's doing and all the good things. Look, media is also there to hold people accountable for the things that are happening. And if we can show that, we do police our own space, we are showing reach, I think those are things that publishers could do as well to, engage the community and grow a little bit more.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. That does it for our time. If we could give a round of applause to our panelists here. That concludes our panel on community esports.